The novel Dracula was written in 1897 by the Irish author Bram Stoker during the Victorian period, which was characterized by repressed sexual desires. The Victorian era was a time of great expansion for the British Empire. However, back in the homes of the British family, there was much restriction and maybe, just maybe, tension regarding the interaction between men and women and their sexual roles as sexual partners. The Victorians' attitudes towards sexuality was a taboo subject, especially in reference to women's sexual desires and gratification. Women were not supposed to have these desires. Women were not supposed to want, need, or feel lust. They were not appropriate for the ideal Victorian woman. It was unnatural. If they did, that woman that pursued to satisfy her lust, she was considered a person of a threat. She was to unmasculate her man, or so they thought. The vampire myth have existed throughout the ages and vast civilizations. They have been studied by academic scholars, filmmakers, mental health professionals such as Dr. Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, and Dr. Carl Gustav Jung, the creator of the archetypes in psychology. For Dr. Freud, the vampire represents the unconscious sexual primitive desire of the id, which is subject to the ego represented by the strict norms imposed by the Victorian society. The vampire, Dracula, seeks to fulfill his repressed desire, satisfy his sexual appetite disguised as the need to suck the blood of innocent victims. Innocent victims such as the Victorian women, who were virtuous, and by taking their virginity and stripping them of all their innocence, he became empowered. For Freud, women with repressed sexual desires channeled these desires into the perfect housewife, the housemaker, the mother, the cook, the caregiver, and nurturer. On the other hand, for Dr. Jung, Dracula is the archetype of evil. Dracula lurks in the dark, where light cannot reach or touch it. The story of good versus evil. He is the undead, the one without a soul, the one with no conscience, no emotions, nor empathy for his victims. He does not compromise. Dracula embodies the shadow, the darkest and negative part of a human being. In this case, the darkest side of the creature. It has no remorse, no guilt. Dracula is the villain of the novel. He desires to corrupt the innocent damsels, Lucy and Mina, by seducing them and making them sexual objects through possession and control. He is a sexual predator. Dracula's teeth can be seen as a representation of the penetration, stealing away the life energy which is represented by blood. Dracula is also the alpha male that controls the wolves. He has many masks, for he can shapeshift into a dog, a wolf, or a bat. The three female vampires represent freedom of sexual repression, and they are the seekers of their own uncontrollable sexual desires. They are the temptress of Harker's own desires. The fair one represents Mina, and for Harker, it is the accomplishment of possessing her physically. Lucy. Lucy is the archetype of the ideal Victorian woman. She is beautiful, fair, and sensual. She is aware of her sexual desires, wishes to fulfill them, but she holds back and repents of her spoken words. Why can't women marry 3 men? In the end, Lucy brings her wishes to reality when Dracula converts her to a vampire and she receives the transfusion from 2 of her suitors. Mina. Mina is a mother archetype. She takes care of Lucy. She advises men. She tries to bring stability and a calm and safe environment to all. Van Helsing. Van Helsing is the archetype of the father figure. Wise, logical, intelligent, and very resourceful. The castle is a representation of Dracula's inner state of his dominion, cold and empty. The final archetypes are the religious elements used to protect themselves from Dracula. The communion host, the holy water, and the crucifix all represent the sacrifice of Jesus, the power of his name, and in his name, his sacrifice and his blood. In conclusion, Dracula is a powerful critique of the traditional Victorian societal norms and the assigned, unbreakable sexual roles of men and women. The repression of sexual desires within holy matrimony, as well as the love affairs outside of the marriage. One last thought. The exploitation of this theme may suggest that it's still a problem today, more than 137 years ago. Thank you.